You did a fucking amazing job.
She did a great job.
To me, when I was like, oh my God, this is jujitsu, where she's like, if you go to his rallies, his crowds are boring, they're tired, they all leave
early.
My crowds are the best crowds. I have the #1 crowd. He couldn't help himself.
Donald Trump's widely publicized love-hate relationship with Joe Rogan, the world's biggest podcaster, is almost certainly going to veer much more towards hate, because in the aftermath of Trump's disastrous debate against Vice President VP Harris, Joe publicly praised Harris and publicly mocked Trump for his performance. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. For context, most recently, when a high-profile celebrity came out and endorsed Vice President VP Harris. This was how Donald Trump responded: "I hate Taylor Swift." Okay, this was day after Taylor Swift publicly endorsed the vice president and encouraged people to go out and register to vote. Now, Joe Rogan, who is a centrist right-wing podcaster, he's socially liberal in many respects, but he grades Donald Trump on a curve. He kind of went off the deep end with respect to vaccinations during COVID and, signal-boosted conspiracy theories and debunked medicinal remedies like hydroxychloroquine and others, right? This is a guy who really, I think wants a permission structure to vote for Trump, vote for Republicans, but can't quite bring himself to go all the way. So even though he praises Trump's policies and is really hard on Democrats, President Biden voice, President VP Harris, lately Donald Trump's disastrous behavior and mind state are such that even Joe Rogan has to, he can't quite bring himself to praise Trump. So he has been publicly praising Vice President VP Harris, and RFK Jr., who recently suspended his campaign to back Trump in the 2024 election. Well, in the aftermath of the disastrous debate against the vice president, this is what Joe Rogan had to say. He was very use in his praise, condescending at times, but very use overall in his praise, and actually mocked Donald Trump on a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience.
Before I say anything, I just want to say, whoever's helping her, whoever's coaching her, whoever's the puppet master running the strings, you did a fucking amazing job.
She did a great job.
They did an amazing job from the moment Biden drops out, forcing Biden to drop out. Right, whatever they're doing, whoever's writing those speeches, getting her to deliver them, coaching her, she's nailing it. She nailed that one speech. She's like, "Say it to my face."
Oh, yeah,
everybody's cheering.
Yeah, she nailed it, dude.
And then last night, to me, when I was like, oh my God, this is jujitsu, where she's like, if you go to his rallies, his crowds are boring, they're tired, they all leave
early.
My crowds are the best crowds. I have the #1 crowd. He couldn't help himself.
And she got him. She baited him on that. She walked him right into it.
100%. 100%. See, the difference in that debate was not a difference in like who's going to have better policies, who's going to be better for the country. The difference in the debate, in my opinion, was who was better prepared. She was way better prepared. And even when it came to answering tough questions, instead of answering, she would just say things that she believes.
Yeah, sure.
And they sounded real good.
Yeah, that's
the soundbite.
That's called being a savvy politician.
It's also called being someone who's working with a team versus someone who's like, they said Trump, that deal was the best deal. They've never seen a deal like this before. They said, how did you put that deal together?
People thought that was just brilliant. Yeah, I know. He was like,
he's not working with a team that's like, I mean, I know he's doing like mock debates. I know he did one with, I think he did one with Tulsi Gabbard, but someone needs to like tell him, like, you've got these tiny little windows and you should have all the words ready for those windows.
He started
there should
out
be no repeating things.
Yeah, he started out
up. So yeah, that's pretty damning of Trump again, when you consider that Joe Rogan is the world's biggest podcaster who grades Trump on a curve, and again, really has sought out a permission structure to give Trump more support than what he does. I should also say, because we've done videos about this as a reminder, because Joe Rogan has with increasing regularity in recent past publicly criticized Trump or publicly praised Donald Trump's opponents like Vice President Harris and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Trump did not handle that particularly well. Trump, as a matter of fact, recently posted, "It will be interesting to see how loudly Joe Rogan gets booed the next time he enters the UFC ring, Mark MAGA 2024, because again, he can't handle the fact that Rogan is criticizing him. Should also say that during a recent podcast interview with Joe Rogan's buddy, a centrist podcaster named Lex Fridman, the public tension between Trump and Rogan was discussed again. This was weeks ago. This was prior to the debate and prior to Rogan's public enthusiastic praise of the Vice President Harris and mocking of Donald Trump. This is how Trump addressed the elephant in the room.
Let me ask you about my good friend Joe Rogan. So you had a bit of tension with him. So when he said nice things about RFK Jr., I think you've said some not so nice things about Joe, and I think that was a bit unfair. And as a fan of Joe, I would love to see you do his podcast because he is legit the greatest conversationalist in the world. So yeah. What's the story behind the tension?
I don't think there was any tension, and I've always liked him, but I don't know him. I mean, I only see him when I walk into the arena with Dana and I shake his hand. I see him there and I think he's good at what he does, but I don't know about doing his podcast. I mean, I guess I'd do it, but I haven't been asked and I'm not asking them, I'm not asking anybody.
It sounds like a challenging negotiation situation.
No, it's not. It's not really a negotiation. And he's sort of a liberal guy, I guess, from what I understand.
Again, I think that Joe Rogan was much more liberal than what he currently is, and certainly with respect to social issues like the legalization of marijuana and gay marriage and things like that. But again, if you track Joe Rogan, the age of COVID in particular, I mean, he's veered in many ways sharply to the right and is much more critical of the Democratic Party by far than the Republican Party. So, Donald Trump needs to update his information. I'll also say, given that this has the potential to ignite another and perhaps more intense public feud between Trump and Joe Rogan, the world's biggest podcaster, I also want to remind you of what a staunch MAGA influencer, Trump supporter, and also large content creator Patrick B.D. David, who is friends with Joe Rogan. He's an avid supporter of Donald Trump. This is what Patrick Bet David had to say in the aftermath of Trump calling out Joe Rogan several weeks ago. PBD, not a big fan of his political takes. I think he's kind of a meathead, but he was right on the money. With respect to this,
MAGA and Trump community, I'm a little bit concerned, and there's a blind spot I want to bring up to you. What benefit do you get from calling out Joe Rogan for complimenting RFK? What benefit? What benefit do you get from saying, I wonder how people are going to boom at the next UFC fight when Joe Rogan walks in? Do you realize who are the only two names that have been constant the last 20 years in the UFC brand? One guy's name is Dana White, who is feared and respected. The other guy's name is Joe Rogan, who is loved, liked, and respected. You think UFC is going to flip on Joe because he complimented RFK on the vaccine position, that he fought Fauci and we wrote this book? You think they're going to do that? And why would you even call out Joe Rogan when Joe Rogan is friends with Dana and put Dana in a tough spot to have to defend you and Joe? Now, obviously, he's a pro, he's a boss, he's a street guy, he's dealt with everybody. He's not going to have a problem handling that. But do you think that's the right move? And it gets me to continue thinking about this and saying, while all this stuff is going on tonight, a lady named Kamala had a packed house in Arizona. You know who showed up? The same people that were not happy about what happened in 2022 midterms, 2 weeks before midterms, when Supreme Court flipped the Roe v. Wade abortion position and put it back on the states. And while everybody thought there was going to be a red wave, there was not a red wave. Got it. And those people haven't forgotten about it yet because it's an important issue to them. And they may come out in 2024 because 2 Supreme Court positions could flip in the next 4 years, and they don't want to give that to you. Oh my God. So they may not be voting for Kamala. They just don't want you to choose the Supreme Court positions. They're not voting for Kamala. That's all they're doing. And so it seems like all the shots and mocking and making fun of her, thinking like, yeah, she can't beat you. She can beat you. 49 to 47 is what the number is right now, with her having the lead over you. Yeah, but that's not going to happen. So this is the problem that I have with MAGA that I think is a little bit concerning. Here's how it works.
And he goes on to say, listen, that basically the MAGA coalition can't afford to make unnecessary enemies. And he was 100% correct. I'm quite glad that it's in Trump's reflexive instinct to pick fights with people that he need not pick fights with. Because if Trump were a more competent deal maker, you know, if Trump were the guy that Trump pretends to be and tells people that he is, we would be in bigger trouble than what we are. All that advice, all of that. Those takes that PBD had on the Trump-Rogan conflict were absolutely fair. And I will say, to drive this point home, 538 has done aggregate polling, voice. President Harris is ahead in the swings, or excuse me, in the national polls, okay? Which is a feather in her cap. But more importantly, and more damagingly to Trump in the aggregate, she's ahead in all of the swing states, all of them that could change tomorrow. But right now, the Vice President Harris is in the lead. She's in the lead with respect to polls. She has the fundraising behind her. She has the momentum. And Donald Trump is going to struggle if he's going to try to win this election. And making an enemy out of Joe Rogan would be one of the worst things he could do. But he's already done it with Taylor Swift. I wouldn't put it past him to publicly pick a fight with Joe Rogan now that Joe Rogan has publicly mocked him and praised Vice President Harris and really drawn attention to his disastrous debate performance in the meantime. Let's hope that that's exactly what happens. And you let me know what you think in the comments.